Hello, I'm Dave Sly, and this is Lecture 1, Visual Basic Controls, in the video notes companion to David Schneider's Introduction to Visual Basic 2012. In this lecture, we'll start Visual Studio and create a simple program while exploring the VB Integrated Development Environment, or IDE. To get started, we just simply select the Visual Studio icon, which will show up somewhere in your workspace after installing Visual Studio. The very first time it comes up, it's going to ask you what you want your default programming language to be. I've already done this and selected Visual Basic. Once you've done that, it won't ask you that again. The next thing you'll do is to select the new project here. Select Windows Forms application. All of our development here for this course is in Windows Forms application. And our IDE environment comes up. Now yours might look a little bit different. One of the things you may see is that the toolbox may be placed on the left as a tab. We may see the properties over here on the right. I like to grab my properties and place them over here closer to where I'm working at. The properties are the, if you will, options or attributes of your control objects that you're going to be placing on the form. Things like buttons and text boxes and all. We're setting the various options that they can have with this properties window. With the toolbox, we're actually accessing these controls, these control objects. And I'm going to go ahead and pin that into place right here. So you can see that I have, once again, my toolbox, my form that I'll be placing these control objects on, and the properties to set them. Typical environment setting. By the way, if you do accidentally close your toolbox or you close your properties window, for example, if I close the toolbox here and it goes away, it's not a big problem. The simple way to get it back is to select the View menu at the top. You'll see Toolbox here. You'll see the Properties windows here. So you can just reselect them and they'll come back in. All right, so let's start in our form by bringing in a button and a text box control. Now we can select our button and our text box from this menu, either from this top pull down, which is all of the controls that are available to you right now in alphabetical order. Okay, so if you're looking for a control and you can't find it, but you know its name, this may be a good way to grab it because it's just all the controls in alphabetical order. Another way is to use these categories of controls, like common controls, container controls, menus, and toolbars. This is how I typically like to do it, simply because the common controls are what I work with the most, and they're all right here at the top. So we'll go ahead and start grabbing our button, drag it into our environment here, and let's also grab a toolbox, text box, and grab that in here as well. You'll notice that as I'm pulling the text box in, it's trying to snap to my button as I get close to it. And as I move even closer to the button, another line comes up, that really small line there right by my cursor, a little hard to see, and that's a proximity line, trying to keep that text box a certain distance away from my button. We'll make the button a little bit larger, kind of center it off here, make it very easy to select. And we'll grab the text box, and I'm just going to snap it over the left, keeping that proximity line distance set, and move it over to the right and snap it to the right. All right, so there's my two controls. Let's go ahead and select the form itself. You can see I have the properties for the form right here. The two key properties that we're going to be working with on the form are the name of the form. That is, essentially, it's a variable name. In this case, it's called Form 1, as we have multiple forms, or windows, if you will. Each one of them will have a different name. But Form 1 is fine. In this case, that's its variable name that we'll refer to it by in the program. When we get down the bottom here, we have another property called text. That's the text we see here at the top. I'm going to go ahead and change this. We'll call this Hello World. All right, and you can see that that's now displayed at the top. That's all we're going to do to the form right now. We'll go ahead and select the button. Once again, the two key properties, the button will just say hello. And I'm actually going to put an ampersand in front of this H, which is the Shift 7 key. And what that will allow me to do is select an Alt-H key sequence in order to activate my button if I wish. Another property that we're going to set is the actual variable name for the button. And in this case, I'm going to call it BTN Hello. I am prefixing the variable name hello for the button with BTN, which is a 3-character prefix for the control type. You'll notice a list of prefixes in your textbook here. The BTN is common for button, TXT for text box, LBL for label. You'll see that each one of the controls has its own unique prefix. And this is important more from a stylistic perspective, because as we're writing our code and we're looking at a variable like this one here, hello, if it's prefixed with a BTN, I know, oh, that is a button. So I know it's a control and I know what the control type is. All right, the last thing we're going to do to this button is I do want to change the appearance a little bit. Let's go down to its font. You can see I can change foreground color and text color and things like that. But we'll just go grab the font. Let's just go ahead and grab a, I don't know, I'll say this Swiss font looks nice. And I'll make it a little larger font size. How about 14? Select OK. There's our hello. All right, that's enough for our button right now. Let's look at our text box. Grab the text box here. Once again, the text displayed is blank. That's fine to start with. And the name, variable name for the text box, default is text box 1. I'm going to call it TXT, once again the prefix, and hello as well. Now in the case of a text box, this one I'm going to use as an output. Oftentimes text boxes are inputs or inner values in data. But I'm actually going to display an output result to this text box. So in this particular case, I'm just going to also add a little set of characters here at the end. Notice I've capitalized the O, called out. It's a little help for me as I'm reading my code and I'm looking at this text box that it isn't an input text box. It's actually, in this case, an output text box. One last thing that some people might want to do is you might want to grab a label, place it next to the text box. Once again, using my proximity line there. And I'm just going to leave the name alone. I'm not going to change that name. But I am going to change the text, because I'm not going to refer to it in my code, essentially. I'm going to say hi, and put a little colon there. And we'll also align it to the right here, middle of that. And one last thing we'll do from an alignment perspective is move this a little bit closer. There we go. So it just says hi. Just a label to tell us what this text box output is. It's just kind of silly right now, but it gives you an idea on how to control these different interface controls. All right, the next thing we're going to do is go into the code portion of this lecture. And to do that, get into the code editor, we're going to double click on the button. And once I've done that, you can see that I actually have some software code showing up here. I've also have a new tab. I have the form1.vb is my code editor tab, and I still have the form designer tab available as well. And I can go back and forth between those as I wish. In here, I'm just going to put a little space here. You'll see that the public form class 1 and end class are kind of like a container, block of code that essentially says, hey, everything related to this form, all of the controls and code are between public class form 1 and end class. Within there, we have a subroutine, which is a block of code related to the code that will be executed when we select, as you can see here, our button. Since I double-clicked on the button in the form, this subroutine was created. And it is a click event, which means that upon selecting the button, with a click, the code in here will be executed. In fact, you can see that all of the controls for the form are easily accessible from this pull down here in the top left. In this case, I have a button, I have a label, which I did not name, and I have my text box. We've been working with the button event. On the right are then all the different ways to trigger these events for a control. In this case, the click event is by far the most common event for buttons, but there are abilities to do double clicks, there are abilities to drag over, there are abilities to, if you tab to it by changing the focus, all different types of things that you can embed code for related to any of these controls. Well, simply in this case, I'm going to set the value, upon hitting the button, I'm going to set the value of the text box, which you can see here as I'm typing TXT. It gives me a recommendation. Maybe this is what you're looking for. I called it an IntelliSense control. I went ahead and selected that, set its text property, and I'm going to set it equal to a text string called Hello World. Text strings are just text encapsulated in double quotes. And I've done that here. Make sure you put a double quote at the beginning and the end to complete that. And so essentially, once again, if I go to my form here, I can execute the code either way. I could select the start, and here's my form. To run the program, I select the button, and Hello World shows up right there in my text box. Now, one thing you might notice is that I don't have the ability now to go ahead and change the program very easily. I can't make major changes. I can do some minor things, but no major changes to the code. And more importantly, my toolbox isn't available anymore. I can't change my form. And this happens a lot. You're running your code, you're doing some debugging, you forget that the code is still running, and then you're trying to figure out, why can't I place more controls on my form? Well, it's probably because your code is running. If I look up here, you can see the red X indicates that the program is still running. I notice that the green triangle here is gone, so I can stop the program here by just picking the red X, and I'm back into my editing environment. That's all for this first lecture.